You gosh darn right, we are live. It is Orange and Blue today, Wednesday, bye week, but lots of things to get to. We didn't have enough time, Mace. Of course, for us to recap that game and just kind of where the Broncos are in their bye week, I think we need a lot more time than a few hours.
Yeah, I think so. And it's really good that they've got the bye because, first of all, they need the rest. Second of all, even people covering the team need the rest. Third, there are a lot of reasons to feel good about the Broncos, but there are some things that are concerns that are worth discussing. And I know this one's going to be near and dear to your heart because you are not pleased with what the Broncos have been forced to resort to in their ground situation, even though it probably is maximizing what they have at the position.
Right. It's the hot hand approach at running back, and it is Orange and Blue today. Cecil, Lammey, Andrew Mason, and let's go there, man, because for the last 2 weeks, it's been Jaleel McLaughlin as a hot hand. And I think, Mace, the best way to categorize it is it's working enough is how I would describe it.
That's actually a good way of putting it. It's working enough. It's working enough in part because if we go all the way back to the offseason, Jaleel McLaughlin did work on his pass pro. Is he a devastating blocker in pass protection? No. Can he be an obstruction? Is it sometimes just get your arms around the guy? Yeah, it is. Like he is better at identifying where the blitzes are coming from. And so this does give the Broncos the flexibility to use him. Now, there's a distinct ceiling probably on what he can bring you. His best role probably does remain kind of change of pace back. But for now, he is the most effective runner the Broncos have, and he's averaged north of 6 yards per carry in his work over the last 4 weeks, and that encompasses 27 carries, 14 of which came Monday night. So at this moment, you'd have to say in that group of three, he's the one that, despite his relatively short frame, is standing the tallest.
He is standing the tallest right now. Does that mean he starts? Does that even matter in a hot hand approach? Because we've seen Javonte, correct me if I'm wrong, as the starter the last couple of weeks, and then Jaleel gets in and he takes off, and Javonte's averaging less than a yard a carry over that stretch.
Well, the funny thing is they gave Jaleel a couple of starts back in early November. He was the first running back up for that 2-game road swing, Baltimore, Kansas City. I think this is one of those things where causation and correlation aren't connected here. But 10 carries or 10 yards on 5 carries in Baltimore, 12 yards on 2 carries in Kansas City. So he has been a bit more effective in recent weeks, being the guy who's second up, but behind Javonte Williams. I mean, it might be just one of those weird things like we saw during the 2015 season when Ronnie Hillman and C.J. Anderson, the late Ronnie Hillman, both were more effective when they were the second running back up that year. It was a very strange thing.
It's strange. We saw it before, like you said, Mace, but why would it be? Do you let the other team it's not like they get worn down. You know what I mean? Like, I wonder why that is. Maybe you just see how they're blocking it or something. And I do like the way this line is blocking for Jaleel.
Yes. Maybe some of it is like a sixth man in the NBA. You're better just kind of sitting on the bench for a bit. Maybe a chance to just see for a possession what the defense has. Maybe there's something to that for Jaleel McLaughlin. He can be as elusive in the locker room as he is on the field. So it'd be nice to hopefully get a chance to ask him about that at some point, because it does seem like you watch him on the sideline. He's always locked in, even if it's not a possession. He's going in there. He's always locked in and involved when he's not out there. And to their credit, so the same can be said for Javonte Williams and Audric Estime. These are not players who dawdle and have their minds drift off on the sideline. They're really involved even when they're not out there getting the carries.
Yeah, they're engaged. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And I think that's a credit to all three. It's credit to the room, honestly. And just
Yeah.
this whole thing. We've talked to Estime about this. Again, Javonte maybe sometimes, and Jaleel is pretty elusive. But how do you, when you don't know if you're doing the heavy lifting and you don't want to press, like there's just this whole situation. The reason I don't like it isn't necessarily fantasy related. When fantasy team's fine, because I don't have any Broncos backs. But just from a human perspective, like, hey, here's the ball, and if you don't do something with it, you don't get the ball again. Like I just don't like that idea. Again, it's working enough.
And the thing is, it's one of those situations where it may favor the mindset of one of these running backs more than the others. And maybe it actually does favor Jaleel because coming into the league and what his role was even last year, it was very much situational back. I mean, you remember last year, the whole thing was like him going on the field for a long time. It was basically a tip of the hand because 70% of the time he checked in, he was getting the football. It's not the same this year. Like, for example, this past game, he had 24 snaps and he had 15 touches. Previous game, he had 20 snaps and he had 7 touches. So it's not quite the way it was last year. Although if you include times he was targeted, it was 16 out of 24. It was 67% on Monday night that he was the focal point of the play when he was out there on the field. So, but I think maybe that's one thing kind of mindset wise for Jaleel McLaughlin is he might be best suited to this because he's always operate under the condition of, okay, I'm getting only X amount of snaps. Even this year, Cease, by the way, he doesn't have more than 24 snaps in a game. That 24 total on Monday night, matching week 1 for his season high.
And that's usually not half of what you get in a game. Games are usually, let's say, 60 plus, sometimes as much as 70 snaps offensively. So 24, like you're out there half the time. I think that does mean Jaleel is more used to that, Mace. That's an astute observation, of course, as always, because he gets to get in there and do what he normally does. And he's working well in space. And the thing is, as Bo Nix stretches this thing out, defenses are going to adjust. Hey, we're going to dare Javonte Williams to beat us. Javonte can't. But if you dare Jaleel McLaughlin to beat you because you're backed up, you're playing cloud coverage, and it's a light box, you know who can take advantage of a light box? It's the little guy, Jaleel.
And he absolutely did on Monday night. You also mentioned something a few minutes ago about how they're blocking for him. Now, I think some of that is Jaleel, if there's another area he's improved in this year beyond just being able to be an obstruction, at least in pass pro, I feel like he has improved in terms of his vision of when those creases form and attacking them, and being decisive at getting to the edge. And yes, the other thing he did show signs in the last couple of weeks, being able to break tackles, and that's something that I know earlier in the season it was an issue, and it probably held him back from more playing time, both based on what we saw in training camp, but even what we saw in those first few games. But we're starting to see him run through and bounce off some people. And that was a part of some of his bigger runs on Monday night. And so it's really interesting. It may actually, Jaleel is who I may ask Sean Payton about on Monday, because I asked him about Devon Vele, and of course he wanted to talk about Audric Estime,
Right.
Not this past Monday, but the Monday before. And he does say, hey, we've got to get Audric Estime the ball more than we have been. But that hasn't manifested yet.
No.
But with Jaleel, a game like Monday night, 15 total touches, 16 times if you include the time he was targeted and it wasn't completed. 16 times being the guy who's getting the ball, that's probably a good, healthy number for him that maybe you don't want to go beyond in terms of optimizing his effectiveness.
Yeah, that probably is the number. We do have the chat room fired up as always. And Lance here asks on your YouTube chat, do you not worry about Jaleel's durability? I personally don't, Mace, because of
Yeah.
the limited touches, as you're saying, limited snaps. Plus, when did you ever see him take a really big shot? Usually there's some sort of glancing blow. I mean, he does go down fairly easy, but it's not like he's getting rocked there between the tackles. That's not really his game.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. You don't want him slamming up the gut. I mean, respectfully to Philip Lindsay, who we both know, Phil had the instinct and willingness to go up the middle. It was one of the things I remember watching him in Shrine Bowl practices at St. Petersburg High School and being blown away by his fearlessness at going into stacked boxes compared with other bigger, stouter running backs.
Mm-hmm.
He was the most fearless back down there in St. Pete that week, nearly 7 years ago. And it's certainly an attribute that makes you take notice of him as a football player, but it's not necessarily the best thing in terms of optimizing his career length, as it were.
Right.
He took a pounding. I always thought with Philip Lindsay, and it was one reason why I was actually encouraged and thought, okay, the Phil Lindsay Melvin Gordon combo could work when they put that together back in 2020. That I thought the best thing for Philip Lindsay would be if the Broncos used him in much the same way as Warwick Dunn. There's a blast from the past name back.
Yep.
Or first with the Buccaneers and then with the Falcons. The key thing with Warwick Dunn was he could go up the middle, but they tried to kind of get him to the outside quite a bit. But another thing on Warwick Dunn was there was always somebody else. In Tampa Bay, they had Mike Allstott, probably the best fullback in terms of ball skills that we've seen in the last about 30 years. And then he goes to Atlanta. The other guy running it happens to be the quarterback, Michael Vick. So there was always somebody else to kind of handle the burden. It wasn't, he could be RB1, but he wasn't runner one, as it were. There was 1 and 1A, whether it was a fullback or a quarterback. And I thought that, one of the things maybe the Broncos did a disservice on with Philip Lindsay is kind of falling into the trap of saying, okay, let's let him be all things here, when that might have actually shortened his career. Jaleel McLaughlin, if you use him right, he could be a 7, 8, 9 year change of pace guy for Sean Payton.
Yep. We've seen it before. I mean,
Yes.
How long and fewer touches, I know, but I think of a Kevin Falk, that type of runner. How long have those type of guys been able to stick around? Our friend Justin Forsett, who did have some time with the Denver Broncos, Justin played a long, long time, and he was a small back. He even had a 1,000-yard season one year.
Yeah. It wasn't going to be his default, but he was going to be able to contribute. Yeah, Justin Forsett came in back into the 2016 season, I believe.
I believe you're correct. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Always one of those guys you root for, man. Those special teams guys will do anything to stay on a roster. Like, you like that type of player. And Jaleel's easy to root for. After the game, Mace, what kind of feel did you get? We've got the Sean Payton clip talking about Jaleel, but what kind of feel did you get about where Sean's head was at with this ground game, about how the running backs were talking? Is Javonte down? Like, there's a lot of stuff to take away still from Monday.
Didn't catch up with Javonte, so I can't kind of offer any insight directly into kind of where he was. As for Sean Payton, I think there's an understanding that he doesn't have one running back right now who can be all things, but he's pretty expertly pieced together capable ground games from various parts. And I think he's doing that here. And I will say, he thought the matchup in particular really favored Jaleel McLaughlin in this game. And this may end up being kind of a matchup-based situation. And in that regard, if you recognize how the New England Patriots used running backs for a lot of the Bill Belichick years, you'll recognize that in terms of what the Broncos will do. Here's Sean Payton after the game Monday talking about Jaleel McLaughlin in the running game.
Played well. We felt like some of the wide zone stuff, tosses, were going to be good. He had a lot of good runs. So part of it was the scheme that was successful, or a couple schemes that we've seen other teams have success with, that we had success with as well. So all in all, it was good.
So the key thing there, wide zone tosses.
And why do you do that? It's because Cleveland can get after the quarterback. So that leads me to believe when they face, let's say, a Steelers in the playoffs, maybe that's a Jaleel type of game.
That's a Jaleel game.
Well, what's an estimate game then? Well, hell, what's a Javonte game? Like, if it is matchup based, as you're saying, Mason, and Coach Payton just said it there, like, all right, I think you're going to have lighter boxes as Bo continues to grow.
Well, the estimate game was Kansas City when you've got somebody like Chris Jones, who's the, who's providing the primary thrust of their pass rush up the middle. And so maybe what you're looking at is teams that are stronger on the interior in their front seven. That's where you're attacking with Audric Estime and Javonte Williams. And then if they're stronger on the edge, that's where it becomes a Jaleel McLaughlin type of game, which I think Pittsburgh is a good example. I'd say, Buffalo, most of their punch right now is coming from the edge, as we're seeing. So Buffalo might be another game that favors Jaleel McLaughlin. Basically, you're talking about two teams that if the Broncos close this out and make it the postseason, it's looking more and more likely you're going to see one of those two. In Baltimore, Pittsburgh and Buffalo for that first game, unless the Chiefs collapse. And I think we're gonna have a better read on the Chiefs and this number one seed when they play the Chargers. The Chargers go to Arrowhead Stadium on Sunday night and take care of business against Kansas City. I think it's fair to say that KC may slip back a bit, and you may be staring at them if you're in the 2-7 game there in round one. If the Chiefs get it done, if they step up their game and beat the Chargers, that tells me that they've found that they've got the other gear and they know they can reach that other gear. And I think then they have a good chance of finishing off for the number one seed.
I think you'll be doing some good things there as the Denver Broncos continue that march on. We do have the chat room asking about how much, Lance again asked, how much of the running struggles is a blocking scheme problem? One of the advanced pieces of data that I look at, Mace, is yards before contact.
Yeah.
The number, if we just take running back, just running back. So I'm going to take Jaden Daniels and Lamar Jackson out of this. Okay. Jaleel McLaughlin's the number 6 running back in the league in yards before contact. That's a Javonte problem. That's not a line problem. Could they be better run blockers? Yes. How many times did we talk to Garett Bolles? He's like, I got to work on my run blocking. Yeah, but this is a run blocking unit. They're doing good in pass protection as well. That's a Bo stat in addition to their stat. But when Jaleel is the number 6 rusher in yards before contact, that's not a line problem.
Yeah, this is the number 5 unit in run block win rate. They were number 3 last year. Okay.
Yeah, it's not them.
They're fine. Garett Bolles has improved. But by the way, it's funny to talk about that. Garett Bolles more of a pass protector than a run blocker, than a run blocker. Mike McGlinchey, a better run blocker than pass protector. But Mike McGlinchey in pass pro on Monday night, I thought his best pass pro game.
Oh, yeah.
Had some Myles Garrett to deal with on Monday night and was crisp and clean for the most part in his work. Now, certainly Bo Nix and his ability to step up, to read the rushes, to diagnose, that's a huge part of it as well. But you've got a nice combination there. It's a lot of good things going on up front on the offensive line. A lot of good things right now.
Yes, you'll be proud of me, Mace. Last night I was watching a little bit of Patrick Bateman clips after the Nuggets game just to wind down. I was watching some Patrick Bateman clips.
Do you like Phil Collins?
Yeah. It's great. Absolutely great. Also, chat rooms asking about why isn't Blake Watson playing, and do we have a Tyler Bidet, like anything, especially with the release of Josh Reynolds. There's a move here. Like, what do we know there?
Well, it's interesting to talk about the release of Josh Reynolds and Tyler Bidet because I think that is part of it here. The Broncos coming up against their limit. They're not there, but they're close in terms of players that they can activate from injured reserve. Cutting Josh Reynolds, we talked about, of course, it definitely is a testament to the quality of the receiving core. But I think Tyler Bidet and the potential for needing him and needing that activation from injured reserve is another layer to why the Broncos moved on from Josh Reynolds. I mean, they could have just put him on the shelf and said, okay, you're not coming back. You're not going to be on the 53. You're done for the year. I think the depth at receiver sort of, was contributed to that part, but not wanting to bring Reynolds back. There are other factors, including that you may want Bidet back. Blake Watson, he's one of those. Blake Watson got behind at the start of camp when he wasn't out there, when he was on the NFI list. Yeah. And it's a pretty common tale for some guys that get behind at the start and they never can come all the way back, at least not that year. And I think that's what we're talking about with Blake Watson. I would expect they'll give him a reserve future contract if there are multiple injuries. I think you'll see Blake Watson back on the 53. But if you see maybe no more than one more injury at running back, I think Blake Watson would stay on the practice squad, and then they'd sign him to a reserve future contract and have him in the mix going into 2025. So I don't think he's out of their plans by any stretch of the imagination. But Bidet, the Josh Reynolds move does have an impact on Tyler Bidet, and it would not surprise me to see him back and active here in the next few weeks. He's been out. He's been rehabbing on the side field at practice, and looks like he's making good progress.
Two things before we're out of here. How about as many as 4 people that work directly under you? Always go office space there. And then you mentioned the plan, Mace. Here's how I'll leave it. And we're going to have great debates about this. We're going to bring in the best draft coverage right here. It's Orange and Blue today. We're the best Broncos coverage, and I don't even feel bad saying that because it's true. Listen, the plan, if Audric Estime gets uncorked, or maybe even Jaleel, you know what I mean? Like, it could be a Jaleel Estime backfield in 2025. That decision will be made based on the production they have over the next few regular season games and hopefully a postseason game.
Yeah, and the thing is, if you want to get an eval on Estime, you got to give him the ball.
Right.
And this is where you may have to come to the conclusion here, and that's why this bye coming now is really interesting, because inevitably there's always some self-scouting and self-evaluation that happens. Maybe not formally as the Broncos give. They do. Sean Payton took the advice of Andy Reid and gives everyone the week off. So there is definitely a lot of getting away from football, but someone like Sean's going to sit there and watch a little bit, and his brain's going to churn. And he wants to get Estime more opportunities. Not just because he's earning them, but you really need to get a good read on where he stands as you go into an off season where, obviously Ashton Jeanty's leading the list, but you go down the list. We'll talk about Devin Neal. We're going to talk about Marion Hampton out of North Carolina. There's a long list of really good running backs coming out here this year. It's a great running back class. And if you don't want to go for the big guy in round 1, you've got a chance to get a game changer in round 3, maybe even round 4. Mm-hmm. So that's why I think you want to get a look at Audric Estime to find out, okay, are you RB1 material, or are we casting our line back into the pond of the draft this offseason? It's funny you say with Jaleel. I think Jaleel, because his role can be very specific, I'm ready to put Jaleel in Sharpie for next year's roster too.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
And then he'd be an RFA. And I think you bring him, it's beyond that. Maybe you're beyond that because he has a specifically defined role that, I'm going to do Patrick Bateman here. It's like satisfying in a narrower way. Like Phil Collins compared to Genesis. So
yeah.
He's satisfying, but in a narrower role.
Well, and just think of how we figured out the core guys this year and the way that they've played. I mean, we'll talk plenty on Friday's show about Nick Bonito, but like he's a core guy, and Jaleel's a core guy. He's worked himself into core guy status, but you got to play. You know, is Estime going to be the RB1 next year? I don't know. He doesn't play.
Yeah, even though you're in the midst of a playoff run here, you got to get that evaluation. And another reason is this, and respectfully to Javonte, but what are you clinging to here right now? I mean, if you go through the last 6 games, I'm just going to give you his. Now, he's still reasonably productive as a pass catcher. Sure. And that's probably what he is at this point, is third down pass catcher. But the last 6 games, his averages per carry, 2.59 yards, 3.5 yards, 1 yard per carry on only 1 attempt, Kansas City. That was, of course, Audric Estime having the hot hand that day. 6.56 yards a carry against Atlanta, made everyone feel good. Look, it feels good when he has a good game. Javonte is incredibly easy to root for as a person.
Yes.
I think that's part of what makes this so hard, is that like Javonte, the dude, you want the best for him. You really do. Right. And he's worked so hard just to get back and play. But then the last 2 weeks, 12 carries for -1 yard. It was -2 on 8 carries against the Raiders. It was 1 yard on 4 carries and a touchdown against the Browns. I mean, I don't think Audric Estime could do worse, is what I'm saying.
No.
And I think he'd probably do better. And one of the lessons coming out of this year overall is trust the kids, right? The kids are all right.
Kids are all right. Jinx, show me a soda.
And you don't want to get fooled again.
That's true. We won't get fooled again. All right, Mace.
On the old Orange and Blue 760, we used to have the drop from that song that was part of our hot take day, that if you had a hot take, we'd play it in. Yeah! Dun, dun, dun.
It gets you going, right?
And I hear that, and I every time I hear that song, I think I got to say something spicy here. Oh, Charlotte, would you like to visit?
Yeah.
This is Charlotte, who did very well at the Irish dancing competition this weekend up in the Chicago area.
Oh, yeah.
Going to the North American Championships in July. Earned her way to the North American Championships by finishing high enough in the Midwest Regionals. Feeling pretty good about it.
Yeah, great job, Charlotte.
Yes. And now you got to go to practice, right?
Nope.
Oh, you're not?
No. Well, we don't have practice today.
Oh, I thought you did.
Mom did. I thought we did it, but we don't.
Oh, you don't have
But
practice.
I have TBT tomorrow.
And you have homework.
I finished my homework.
Oh, good. Bonus. Maybe you can...
Boom.
All right. Well, then you can be here.
Yeah, okay.
All right. All right. You want to do this again tomorrow?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I just heard you yell something. I'm like,
What am I? Yeah!
that. I thought you said that. I'm like,
Bye, Charlotte.
It's always great when we could get a Charlotte appearance on this program. That's for sure. By the way, I don't know if you heard, but Dave Logan talked about you on the game broadcast.
Oh no, what did he say?
You must have tweeted out something stat. Why can't I remember what it was? But he said, "We got that from our friend Andrew." And then Rick Lewis goes, "Mace."
Oh, that's good.
Yeah. So I was chuckling in the car on the way back to the home studio. So.
Oh yeah, Rick gets it.
Yeah, for sure.
This is why I love doing what I do. Little things like that. But also, it's, we're all friends, even though we're on competing, outlets and whatever. I mean, we're all, most of us get along pretty well. So it's all good. Yeah.
Yep. All right, that is a wrap for today's program. We've got offensive kind of report card grades on the bye week be on Thursday, and then we've got defensive report cards on the bye week. That'll be on Friday, and enjoy a little bit of time away from the Broncos. But we certainly appreciate your help on YouTube. Mace, you are the math expert, so I'll give you the exact math right now. Up to the date, we are at 15,745.
Whoa, that's a great showing yesterday. So we are down to 255. And we're sitting here on December 4th, and after today, 27 days. So that is fewer than 10 a day. That's all we need to get our bonuses. What are you going to do with your bonus, big guy?
Spend it on college.
Yes, exactly. It's all. Yeah, we both got kids. That's where the money's going. But yes, we do appreciate all of you subscribing, and hope more of you subscribe and check out our show. And but it's not just about subscribing; it's about liking,
commenting,
sharing,
subscribing,
and hitting that notification bell,
so that you
never
miss
a
vid. That's right. He's Andrew Mason. You follow him on all the socials at Mace Denver. I'm at Cecil Lammey saying OBT is a BFD. Somebody sent me a message on Facebook that said big football day or something, Broncos football day. I was like,
that
no.
too.
It can't be that.
Too. Yeah,
it can be that. Yeah, sure. Whatever. We're here for you. He's Mace.
Hey.
I'm Cease. Having fun. Stay frosty, everybody.